Hey guys, how's it going? So I've already got the Cold Steel AK and the CRKT NERC tie reviews taped, but before I upload them I wanted to make a video talking about asymmetric edges, and I think I've talked about this on camera before and just said that I don't like it, but I haven't really told you guys what that is. And some of you probably already know, some of you don't, and I haven't really seen a video talking about this, so I thought it'd be good if I could put one out. So you're just modeled on a piece of paper. I have just your conventional V grind as it would look looking down from the tip of the knife toward the handle, I guess. So you can see you would have on the right and left side of the knife you've got just the same length of sharpened section, and this is really good for something like the Spyderco Triangle Sharp Maker and just for general cutting performance. And when I say the Spyderco Sharp Maker, I mean it and pretty much every other sharpening system I've ever seen. This sort of edge is very conducive for basically all sharpeners, just because you're trying to take equal, when you're trying to sharpen it's because, say you've blunted this point, well, to resharpen it you're going to want to take equal amounts of material off of each side of the grind until you can come back down to a point. So that's how something like the Triangle Sharp Maker works. Same goes for the Lansky system and Edge Pro Apex, virtually every sharpening system I can think of, and it's also the same for just freehand sharpening. It's just very conducive to being able to hold the same angle as enforced by some systems and not enforced by freehand sharpening. You try to enforce it yourself, but you're trying to take equal amounts of material off both sides until you can come back down to a fine edge. So one thing that's not conducive for that is when knife designers and producers do this, and they'll make one side of the grind much longer and steeper than another side of the grind, which would be much shallower and much shorter. And the best knife I have to kind of illustrate this is this CRKT, and I'll kind of waver it around in the light. Hopefully you guys can see this relief edge here. Got a whole lot more relief edge on this side than on this side. And they may have done this because of the serrations, I don't know really, but it sort of illustrates the problem that you've got a whole big unsharpened portion, therefore a steep grind, or rather a whole long relief edge on this side, and therefore a steep grind. This side you've got a much more shallow, abrupt edge, and that has its own problems when it comes to cutting and cutting asymmetrically, pulling to one side when you're cutting, but it really becomes a problem in sharpening when you're trying to re-hone that edge. It's hard to do because, like with the Sharp Maker, I assume you guys have seen one of these before, but I'll show you one anyway. If you've got two stones both set at the same angle, you're trying to sharpen two different angles, it's not going to work. You're going to be removing different amounts of material at different angles from both sides, and ultimately it just leads towards not a very conducive system for trying to sharpen a knife. And I've actually made knives duller just because I assumed that they were sharpened symmetrically when they weren't, and it goes through a whole long process. You could fix it, of course, by reprofiling, but there's a lot of people that don't have the resources, or don't have the cash, or just don't want to have to reprofile a knife immediately after having bought it the first time they want to sharpen it. And I think they're justified there, especially because so many companies like CRKT, in most of their knives, they get this correct. They have very symmetrical grinds, very easy to sharpen. Spyderco always gets this right, as far as I can tell. Their edges are almost always 40 degrees, or as most people call 20 degrees. That's true of all the Spydercos I've ever owned. The only company I've owned that does this wrong is Cold Steel. They almost always, it's not as noticeable as this, but here, I doubt you guys can see it. You'll just have to take my word for it. The edges are almost always asymmetric, and that just becomes a big problem in sharpening. So like, this is the only Cold Steel I've ever sharpened a lot, and it was a real pain. It was nowhere near as easy as the Spydercos or the CRKTs. This Cold Steel I haven't sharpened yet, but it does have the asymmetric edge as well. Now, like I said, it's nowhere near as drastic as these paper cutouts I have, or as this CRKT. This one's just sort of a weird example. Just thought it illustrated the problem well, but the Cold Steels have it. And another area that the Cold Steels sort of fail in is they don't just have their edge at 40 or 20 degrees like most companies do. They cover a whole wide gambit of angle grinds on their different model knives, and they don't tell you what angle each knife is. So I've had a hard time sharpening them. Like the AK, I finally got it sharp when I took it off when I took my Sharp Maker off of the 40 degree edge setting and put it on the 30 degree back bevel setting. So it turns out that this is ground closer to 30 degrees than 40, and cold steel never gave me any information on that, so I didn't know. So that's, I guess the point of this video is saying that a big point in a knife's favor is if the grind is symmetric, and if I get to know beforehand, either it just comes at 40 like a lot of knives do, a lot of CRKTs, Spydercos, a bunch of other knives. 40 is just a relatively conventional normal angle for everyone to use. But if it doesn't come at 40, then you really need to let people know that and let them know what angle it does come at, so that they can try to use their sharpening system to the best of their ability to replicate that angle and get back to that sharp edge. So for example, the cold steels I think are probably closer to a 32 than a 30, which doesn't make any sense because a lot of sharpeners don't have a setting for 32, but they do for 30. They're claiming that they're getting better performance at a 32 degree angle than 30. They might be. In my mind, it's probably negligible, and it's nowhere near as important as being able to resharpen your knife. So yeah, that's just the point of the video. If I complain in the knife review about asymmetric edge, that's what I'm talking about, just difficult to sharpen. And I'll also say the same. I'll say something different if the grind is symmetric, but it doesn't work with either of the angles on my sharp maker. I know the Lansky has more settings, obviously the Edge Pro has more settings. The Spyderco is a pretty common sharpener though, and I think if you're not grinding your knives to either 30 degrees or 40 degrees, you should definitely let people know so that they know before they buy the knife, and really there better be a reason, because those are the two angles that have really optimal cutting performance. So yeah, there's that. That's what an asymmetric edge is. Those are the problems that it presents, just difficult to sharpen and unnecessary really. In some of the worst cases it causes non-symmetric cutting, which never has been a huge issue for me, but I know for some people it is. So yeah, hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Hope you understand something I'm complaining about now. Hope you look for it on your knives. Yeah, there you go. Stay tuned for more of the same.